A part of me thinks that the Ubiquity playlist on this channel should also be called the playlist of videos which are long overdue. Anyway, this is another entry into the description of magical systems in Ubiquity games. This one brought to us, as promised in the last video, by Quantum Black, which is produced by Quantum Black Games. Like many of the other licensees for Ubiquity, Quantum Black takes, let's say, the base understanding of how magic works in the Ubiquity system and gives it its own twist. Whereas in Desolation we saw freeform magic appear, and then we saw a different way to do freeform magic in All for One Regime Diabolique. In Hollow Earth Expedition, of course, we have ritual magic, which is not freeform. Likewise, in Quantum Black, we have a magic system which is intended to be ritual based, not freeform, not spells created on the fly by magic using characters. However, it does provide a methodology for creating your own rituals. This is intended for the game master to design rituals that will fit whatever it is that they're trying to do with their Quantum Black setting. This is quite nice. So rather than having to print a long list of rituals, it provides a template for ritual types, which then can be modified. Cool. Now, like with All for One, there is a very distinct genre at play here, and Quantum Black is very clear on its particular description of an action horror role-playing game. So, with that in mind, how is magic supposed to be used is a very important question. And that question takes up a good portion of the beginning part of the magic chapter, and for good reason. It's a good use of space to communicate very clearly with the game master and players about what role magic is expected to take. It's not the be-all and end-all answer. It's more on the desperation side of the scale. Well, nothing else works, so let's let's sacrifice a member of the team to make sure that we can save the world, kind of stuff. Hard on sanity and hard on teammates. So with that in mind, let's take a step into the Quantum Black world and look at magic as presented there. Okay, the game, as we mentioned earlier, is not providing a free-form magic system for the characters to use. When it opens up, it implies that other types of magic are available. Possibly this is because the Ubiquity game system now offers so many different types of magic across all the different lines and licensees. Possibly because they have future designs on how the magic in the world that they are creating piece by piece is going to take shape. But for this game, which is primarily connected to Lovecraftian cosmic horrors, magic is open to any caster. So that's the first thing we need to understand, is that there's other types of magic out there. Magic as represented in Quantum Black, the role-playing game, is ritual-based, and anyone can learn to cast those rituals. Whether or not they should is a different topic. To obtain a new ritual requires an appropriate vehicle for learning it, some form of instruction, whether that's written or direct instruction from a mentor, and the cost of 3 experience points. So this is very much in line with the standard Hollow Earth Expedition method of adding rituals. But the rituals themselves are, for the most part, left to the game master to devise, and they are given the specific description that they shouldn't be multi-purpose spells that can be applied and mixed and matched according to the situation, like you'd have in a fantasy game, where you have a generic seeming spell that you're going to apply to a very specific situation again and again and again and again. or a series of different specific situations. These rituals seem to be focused on one particular use, such as a banish spell for a particular type of horror. So this isn't a multi-purpose spell. We can't use that banish spell to banish something else, nor can we use it to learn how to banish something else. It is unique in and of itself. So this is something to understand and get in line with, because this is part of how the feeling, the mood, the atmosphere of the game is communicated. Magic isn't really one of the reliable weapons of the characters in a Quantum Black game. It carries with it a lot of uncertainty, and the pursuit of it is dangerous.
So let's talk about what a ritual is in the game and what the game master is doing when they are creating rituals for their campaigns. And that's really, I think, how we should think of it. Rather than creating spells for the characters, you're creating spells that exist within the campaign, things that will be uncovered in magical libraries, things that will be found in whole or in part on recovered fragments or arcane bric-a-brac from cultist strongholds and this sort of thing. Items that will be pieced together and will take on specific significance at a certain point in time in the campaign. So the rituals, when you look at the ritual design section, they have some typical elements, such as range and area of effect, the number of targets, the target type, which is things like, is it a human type character, or is it a more supernatural character, and if so, how supernatural? The duration, whether or not it does damage or applies some other kind of effect, and that's basically the core aspect of the ritual in terms of modifiers. However, there are the existence of ley lines and dead spots, which can affect your performance, and the availability of teamwork and the concept of sympathetic magic. So these things also need to be considered when preparing a ritual. How will they affect the ritual going forward? Are they a requirement, or are they instead something which might aid the character? Now, there are 4 steps in spell design in Quantum Black, and they're very clear and pretty basic, easy to remember. It's not a complicated process. And as this won't be happening live during your actual game, it's something that you can follow through just as a checklist to make sure that you've covered all the bases. And these are to take a look at the ritual paradigms that are provided in Chapter 5, Ritual Magic. And the paradigms themselves are core ritual effects from which to build from. Then the second step is, once you've chosen the paradigm, is to apply modifiers to it so that this spell goes from being a generic idea to a specific ritual. Then step 3 is to determine what, if any, additional components are involved in it. So some of these may be optional and some might be required. Finally, is to remember that any game of horror, even one that's based in action, involves creating that atmosphere, that mood, that will lead to the reason for action and the reason for the horror. So this involves giving the ritual an interesting name, and more than that, putting it in a location which gives it the gravity that it needs. What kind of mystic tome is it found in, or as a part of the recovered effects from a raided cult is it? So, as the game master, as I recognize what themes I want to explore in this particular campaign and what opposition is likely to be faced, and the role of magic in the game, I start to think of what magical material is out there to be discovered, what elements of it can be easily learned by the characters, and what shape that should actually take. And then I move through Chapter 5, Ritual Magic, and I create those rituals. I may need more later on. I may never ever see these in use, but they're out there coloring and shaping how the cults behave, when and where their magic might take place, what physical, mental, and social requirements go into casting those particular rituals in those particular times, at those particular places, and all of that will shape how your game is run, how the characters will have to respond or will then later be able to respond to these supernatural threats. Now that we've talked about the modifiers and the components which affect rituals, let's take a look at the paradigms from which the rituals are drawn. There's quite a few of them, and they are in order, alphabetically, which is nice. Alter weather, animate dead, banish, contact, control emotion, create gate, curse, curse greater, curse lasting, cursed illness, dark resurrection, detect magic, divination, enchant weapon, enslave entity, free entity from control, forget, protection from entity, repel entity, remove enchantment, ritual enchantment, scrying, seal opening, summon entity, suspended animation, switch minds, transformation foul, transformation willing. These are the basic paradigms. So let's take a look at a paradigm in depth so we know what is involved. The format is the paradigm's name, some suggested ritual names to be used in character, the complexity rating, range, area of effect, target, duration, effect, additional requirements, if resistance is possible, how, the dark cost, and the penalty for critical failure. Now, the dark cost is something that we'll talk about in a moment. Just remember that it's out there. So let's take a look at bind as our example. So bind gives 3 different suggestions for how a bind ritual might be named, and then tells you that it's complexity hard. Now, there is a chart provided, a very simple chart, which tells you that if the complexity of a ritual is to be hard, how many turns need to pass for one casting roll, how many successes need to be accrued to be successful, and, of course, the difficulty. So a hard spell will not be easy, as you might expect. Range. For the bind spell, the caster is to create a binding trap by drawing on a surface. So its range is limited to inside that design. The game master then needs to think about the size, the materials, the specific shape for that design, either as something to be discovered as evidence at a scene, or something to learn to do in order to cast the spell. The area of effect is described as the immediate area. The duration, it lets us know that bind rituals last until their markings are disturbed. Then it describes the basic effect of any bind spell. This is your starting point for creating your specific bind spell. Additional requirements. Okay, so it's being more specific now. The caster must mark the area that will serve as the trap for the binding, and then lets you know how much variation there might be in creating those marks, and that the shape varies. But it also lets you know what is commonly used to draw the circle, and what shapes are common, like circles or pentagrams. Then it gets into the dark cost. As I said, we talk about the dark cost a little later. Here, the dark cost is listed as being the caster becomes irrationally paranoid about the escape of what has been bound. Or is it really obeying me, or is it just tricking me? So you can instantly cue on this from fiction involving this kind of magic. And if the dark cost comes into effect, you can imagine this being quite useful in terms of generating that atmosphere and stirring people to actually do something in game to deal with it. Finally, we end up with the penalty for critical failure. The caster believes the ritual has been completed successfully. It is a beautiful penalty for critical failure in this case, rather than an explosion or the summoning of something worse. Wouldn't it be nice if they assume that everything worked okay? And this feeds into the dark cost. So well done there. So this is the example of a paradigm. It almost seems like a spell in and of itself, but you'll note that it's the framework or the guidelines for one. Then, once the specifics for your setting are applied, it becomes a ritual, a very specific ritual for a specific thing in a specific time and place that the characters can discover and learn or experience the brunt end of, that comes with a small experience point cost and can be cast according to the normal rules of the game. So we'll finish off this video by talking about how magic is actually done according to the system. This is a Ubiquity powered game, so the system part of things is quite simple. Once you know what you're supposed to do, you can just let that slide into the unconscious part of your mind so that you can spend most of your attention in processing, describing it, and making it cool and atmospheric and threatening and mystical and all of that sort of thing. So casting a magical ritual is by default an extended action, even if you don't need it to be. So if you don't succeed in the first roll, you can continue, and as soon as you succeed, you can stop. If you stop in the middle, then all accrued successes have been lost. The spell has been interrupted. The attribute to which spellcasting differs is intelligence, and that can be connected to the ritual magic skill with a specialty of thaumaturgy. So intelligence plus ritual magic thaumaturgy is used for casting spells. So with a high enough intelligence, you should be able to follow clear instructions along and cast the simplest of spells. Now, in Hollow Earth Expedition, the difficulty of magic use is generally defined as being 1, with 5 successes required to enact the ritual. Here, there are increasing difficulties for types of ritual determined by the paradigm, the type of ritual that they are. So this goes average, requiring 1 success per success. Hard, requiring beating a difficulty of 2. Nigh unthinkable, requiring beating a difficulty of 3. Unthinkable, requiring beating a difficulty of 4. And if you've played All for One and tried to deal with the standard difficulty of 2, then you know what a significant barrier these are to at least the timely casting of spells, unless you are a real specialist in that area, in that magical area. Now, that doesn't end there. The average spell, as I said, like Hex, requires 5 successes to be successful. And Hard increases this to 6. Nigh Unthinkable follows the Ubiquity paradigm, increasing that to 8, and therefore Unthinkable bumps that up to 10. The number of successes that you need to accrue turn by turn against that difficulty. So imagine having a 6 or 7 die pool trying to beat a difficulty of 4, and only the successes over 4 can go toward the 10 successes that you need in order to cast this ritual. It goes further than that. It also applies a casting time, which increases per difficulty. This is something that I really like about how much thought went into creating thaumaturgy for Quantum Black. So the average difficulty, 1 turn, 1 roll, no problem. You will expect to, get these average spells out pretty quickly. But by the time you get up to Unthinkable, which is these major, cosmic threat opposing rituals, then it's going to require 10 minutes of casting time per roll at that difficulty of 4, needing to get 10 successes. All right, so imagine you're only getting 1 or 2 successes per roll. At 10 minutes per roll, this is a really long ritual. Doing this without help does seem to be unthinkable. Help might be in the form of ley lines or special magical equipment or a large group of people contributing to the effort. Now, the information about casting also includes the ability to resist. Characters can resist incoming magic. They might do so by using a particular attribute which is under attack by the thaumaturgical ritual to resist, and there is a difficulty assigned to that attempt. So against an average spell incoming, you have a resistance difficulty of 3. Against an unthinkable attack coming in, you've got a resistance difficulty of 6. So, good luck to you. But there's a lot of really interesting detail here. Anyone can cast magic. Anyone can learn to cast this magic, and anyone can resist it. All of these having, caveats, special situations where these things are true or untrue. And it keeps getting better because this is a system in which sanity plays a major role. So anytime you cast a spell, your sanity will be affected. It will be reduced every time you cast a spell. It might be reduced by a minimum number of 1, or it might be reduced by more. And as the complexity of a spell increases, what we call the attack strength of the sanity affecting situation caused by the magic also increases. So if you're casting an average spell, the sanity attack strength is only 2. By the time it gets up to unthinkable, it's climbed to 11. You're going to get hammered by casting this spell. So again, proper preparation is necessary, or starting out already as a gibberingly mad, insane cultist could be a benefit. On top of all of this, certain types of magic in certain situations carry some kind of curse or dark cost. Things coincidentally come about that affect the caster or those around them in negative ways. Thaumaturgy is not understood, so of course the dark cost is not understood. All of these really excellent building blocks coming together to make a system of magic which can, if you've got players that are really interested in this sort of thing, can really help immerse them in this setting of uncertainty. You've got the corporate suits on one end saying, go, 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 protect our assets and ensure that the world is safe and so on. But also you've got everything else telling you that you'd be insane to go forward with this, or at the very least, a martyr, because you're not coming back. So this gives Quantum Black a very strong vibe, a very strong atmosphere that can be built on for a lot of fun gaming, and magic is a big part of that, even though this is not likely to be a major part of what the characters willingly choose to use against the forces arrayed against them. But you never know. So this concludes our very quick look at the ritual magic thaumaturgy skill in Quantum Black. Hope it's been useful, if nothing else, as an enticement to check out this game. There's a lot going on in it, which can give you a lot of creepy fun in a modern, Ubiquity-powered environment. Our next video will stay with Quantum Black, and we'll look at its take on the sanity system for Ubiquity, because this is a game that's very, very focused on action and horror. Sanity need to be looked at in a slightly different way, so we'll explore that in the next video. Once that is done, we'll be heading out into new territory. See you then.